Ready? Okay. We call the meeting to order. Start with Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mocker.
Here.
Packard.
Here.
Smith. Here. Manning.
Here.
Hammond.
Here. Any conflict of interest declarations? Hearing none. Approve agenda.
Move to approve with the addition of jail discussion.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Approve minutes.
So we have two sets of minutes, so I will motion that we approve both sets of minutes.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Roll call, or all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Are there any visitors to be heard? You want to wait, Andy? Dan?
Is it out when it's on?
Up and
Okay.
down.
Thank you. Dan Christopherson from the Clay County Historical Society. We'd just like to offer our assistance in any way that we can for the restoration of this building. We still think that this would be able to be remodeled, restored, and made into a very fine center for county government, safe, secure, as well as systems that will make it comfortable for employees as well as the general public. Along this line, on July 28th, Bob Yap, who's a nationally recognized historian and preservationist, will be here in Vermillion at the sponsorship of the Vermillion Historical Preservation Commission. He will be here to do some workshops on historic preservation and for questions and answers on projects. Hopeful that county commissioners will put that on their calendar and be willing to meet with Bob that day, sometime during the day, and kind of see what he does and what he might have to offer for our county, possibly at some point going forward. Bob is from Hannibal, Missouri, and he used to have public broadcasting shows on that topic, but now HGTV has kind of taken that over with a lot of new young people that do that. So, but Bob is one of the old school preservationists, and to give you just a little bit more about that, I'm going to ask Susan Gray to tell you.
Good morning. I'm Susan Keith Gray, and I'm chair of the Vermillion Historic Preservation Commission. And we are proud to be able to sponsor Bob Yap to come do this workshop. And the commission's role is to educate the citizens of the area about historic preservation and to provide workshops in this nature. And so we're very happy to be able to do this. And yes, I have a flat sheet here, which I would be happy to leave with you, but he has had much experience in, as Dan mentioned, television, but also he runs a school in Hannibal, Missouri, where he trains people as well as just anyone who wants to come, but actually has a school where he teaches these skills to many others. He also works as a consultant where he goes all over the country analyzing buildings, doing research on the status of these buildings. So I encourage you to take part in this, and we can all learn together what the possibilities are concerning this and other historical buildings. Thank you.
Any other visitors to be heard? Don?
Thank you. My name is Don Deline, and I appreciate the chance to talk to you briefly. If some of you are, or all of you are a little frustrated at the results of Tuesday's election, I could sure understand that. But as I think about the issues that confront the commission, to me, there's far more that we agree on than we disagree on. I certainly think the jail can't continue. We need a new jail. Everyone that I know who voted against the bond issue feels that way. Probably there are others with other reasons. The public safety facility needs major changes. I think the employees who work in this building deserve to work in good, safe, productive space. So I think on most things we're in agreement. Of course, the disagreement is over the renovation of this building, and that's a serious disagreement. But I'm hoping that the commission will decide quickly to work with those of us who voted against this to develop a plan quickly to get the work done to make this county and its facilities first rate in every respect. Thank you.
Any other visitors? Andy?
For those who can't see me, I'm Andy Howe, Clay County Sheriff. Yesterday, I was on Department of Health's website and saw that at that time, Clay County had 0 active COVID cases. We have 1 today, so unfortunately. At that time, I drew up a letter of commendation for the staff of the jail. And I'd hoped to have representatives from the jail staff here, but we have court happening this morning and they weren't able to come down. But I wanted to share that with you, and hopefully the commission would join me in expressing appreciation for the jail staff for the work they've done this past year and a half. Individually, the staff are Tiffany Husby, David Stiles, Preston Rhodes, Julie Platchy, Zoe Olson, Lauren Gregg, Tyler Shook, Grayson Lass, Austin Stromberg, Cole Alba Edgecombe, and Dylan Miller, who just recently resigned. I wish to express my sincere appreciation for your attention to duty and consistent effort in the fight against the coronavirus while employed in the Clay County Jail during 2020 and the first half of 2021. Thanks to the effort of the staff of the Clay County Jail, we have prevented the transmission of the virus within the jail during the period between the declaration of the pandemic in early 2020 and today, yesterday, when the South Dakota Department of Health reports no known active cases in Clay County. Your effort was maintained through the darkest days of the pandemic. Throughout this period, staff followed recommended precautions, performed rigorous sanitation, and at all times protected the inmates in their custody. Due to these efforts, no inmates contracted the virus while in our custody, no staff contracted the virus at the jail, and no staff spread the virus to other staff. Our staffing was maintained at full strength over all shifts, and the performance of our duties was not diminished thanks to the diligence of the jail staff. You deserve considerable credit for your work to keep our inmates and other staff safe, as well as protecting our community. Our jail's performance and success is due solely to the quality of our staff and the consistent professionalism and diligent effort toward our mission. Andrew Howe, Clay County Sheriff. And at the moment, we had 2 of our jail staff, Lauren Gregg and Grayson Lass, just joined us to represent the rest of the jail staff.
Thanks, Andy. Any other visitors?
Good job, gentlemen. Thank you. I'm Roger Jackson. I guess in light of the vote, I'd like to suggest maybe establish a committee similar to what we set up for the city hall.
Microphone, please.
Oh, okay. Roger Jack, concerned citizen, Vermillion. In light of the vote yesterday, I'd like to suggest that maybe you guys look at starting a courthouse committee similar to the city hall committee we did a few years ago. Ended up with the new building. It was maybe a little more inclusive and open to advertise to the public and so forth. Made up of, I don't know, half city residents and half county residents or something. To try and, obviously we need to move this thing forward, but considering expense of construction right now, it seems like we have plenty of time to consider our options and then get a bid when prices quiet down a little bit. I don't know if any of you, I'm not doing any new construction. I don't know any other people that are spending top dollar right now to do any major project. I guess that's all I have unless you have questions for me.
Nope, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Any other visitors? Hearing none, canvass the election results. Rule Ward 1. I show 111.
I know she explained which direction this goes in, but,
Here's Rule Ward 1.
oh,
So I've got 111 voters. Is that?
Yeah.
Is that jive?
Yeah, total sheet processed 111, total ballots cast 111.
Rule Ward 2. I have 109.
That's correct.
Ward 3. $386.
That's correct.
correct.
Central Ward. I have 271.
Then there was one that was cast blank.
Okay.
So 271 plus one cast blank.
It should just be 271 though.
It should be just the
Yeah,
271.
because we run the blank one, it gets outsorted in the machine first, and then we tell the machine to accept it, run it back through so that it gets counted in that total sheets process.
Northeast Ward. I have 154.
Correct.
Northwest. $464.
464.
Yep.
We're showing 461.
We ran 461 through the machine. Are there any that are crossed out on there?
3. You said you had 461?
Yeah.
Correct.
I got 3 highlighted. Is that what the problem is? That? Those were both. They were written in the book by mistake. Okay.
So then that would total out.
In the Southeast Ward. $846.
Correct.
We did have one provisional ballot that did count in that one. I think that's worth noting that the Provisional Counting Board met this morning and certified that one ballot, so. Looks good.
Need a motion?
To accept the results? Yeah, we do, don't we?
Yeah. I'll make a motion to accept the account.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Beckenhauer Construction bid award.
Oh, wrong place.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
All right. I have to apologize. I'm on my phone right now, so I don't have the ability to share screen, but I'm assuming everybody has the bid tab that was sent.
Yes, we do.
Yes.
Yes, we have it.
All right. Okay. So we collected bids for the re-roofing of the existing courthouse, as well as tuck pointing, recalking of the exterior of the building. As you can see, we got 3 bidders for each scope of work, as well as a few alternate pricing there. We called and we scoped out the bidders, just talked through what they were doing exactly, kind of when they could start, and we also ran a credit check on them, credit rating, as you can see there, with the scores, kind of what some of those mean. So I think with the tuck pointing one, those were based off of tuck pointing roughly 35% of the building. Tuck pointing is one of those things where it's hard to know exactly what the scope's going to be until you get up there on the building and start doing it. So in order to get some apples to apple bids, that's how we asked the bidders to do that. We also did get a unit rate. So our recommendation for the tuck pointing would be the Heineman restoration for that base bid is $65,000. If the county wanted to add a performance bond to that, that would be at 3%. I don't have that rate figured out in front of me. And then they had a unit rate of about $4 a lineal foot for additional. So we would recommend to the county that they carry a what we'd call like an allowance or a contingency with that tuck pointing. So when they get up there to start doing that work, if there's more that needs to be done, then there'd be some money there set aside for that. I would probably recommend roughly maybe a $30,000 allowance, but that can be, I guess, discussed or vetted later. And they proposed starting that around mid-September to do that work.
I'm just going to throw out there, I believe the state statute requires that performance bond.
Okay. That's why we asked for those rates. So yeah. That'd be about $1,950 added onto their base bid. Any other questions on the tuck pointing? I think Dick Strasberg's on as well. I don't know, Dick, if there's any comments you had on that one.
No, other than we just recently worked with the same organization with Minnehaha County in Sioux Falls, and the county was happy with them, and they did a good job.
Okay. Would like to point out we did contact Jones Caulking as well. They were significantly higher, but they are from Vermillion, so we felt we at least needed to reach out to them. And he was, obviously knew he was high and was just kind of worried about all the detailed work he was going to get into. And he said, if somebody else can do it that much cheaper than me, then more power to him. So we at least wanted to make sure, because he was a local contractor, that we touch base with him. If there's no questions on that one, the other package that we bid out was the re-roofing. So those bids there represent tearing off the existing roof, membrane down to concrete,
adding 3 inches of insulation and then a 60 mil EPDM roof back onto the top. We've got their bond cost shown there. There's also an alternate for a Dens deck cover board. So it's just like an added layer of protection that could be put on that roof. There is a little bit of difference there. White Hawk Roofing gave us like an alternate to go with 1 layer of 3-inch versus 2 layers of 1.5 inches. And they did that as a deduct, but then an add for the cover board of 11,000. So if you would go with both of those, it'd be $8,000 add. Boone Brothers Roofing suggested a little bit better cost saving for that alternate cover board, to do a 2.5-inch layer of insulation and then use a 1/2-inch layer of a heavy duty isolation, which they felt would give it a very similar performance compared to the Dens deck cover board. So we kind of reviewed both of those. Again, we checked their credit score rating. White Hawk is a credit rating of C category, more risk there versus Boone Brothers high credit rating. The one reason we dug so much into Boone Brothers versus White Hawk with the cost differences, White Hawk is using what they call a mule hide EPDM. In my 20+ years, I've never heard of the manufacturer. So we did some research. We reached out to a couple different architectural firms and some different roofing contractors that we have a relationship with. So the mule hide would be like a manufacturer like Carlisle or Firestone Roofing are probably the 2 most well-known roofing systems, at least in this area of the country. That one there is a product we've never used before. Reached out to, again, a couple different architectural firms. They have had very little experience with it as well. So we feel with the roof being a very important system that goes on your building, and with performance of being unknown, we would recommend going to the second bidder of Boone Brothers because of their one credit rating and the system that they're using, which is a Firestone EPDM. Dick, I don't know if you have anything to add there before they make questions.
Yeah, Tegra has the same opinion. Given that this is a historic building, it's going with a proven manufacturer for the roof we'd sure support that. And we've used Firestone on, I don't know how, probably over 100 buildings. It's a very common roof, and we've never used the other ones. And I spoke with one architect on it who hadn't heard of that other manufacturer as well.
Yeah. How long will this roof last on average?
There is I'd have to, let me see if I can, typically there's a 20-year warranty on the roofing system. That's pretty standard in the industry. Make sure, I believe that's what we were doing here. Yeah. Looks like a 20-year warranty. So usually within 20, I would say in my experience, within 20, 25 years, you're going to be needing to replace that EPDM system.
Thank you.
I mean, there's not a huge difference in cost, about $19,000. And if you think the Boone Brothers is using something that better than what the other one, I think that's probably where we need to go.
Right. If you take the base bid and add the bond cost in, and you would take the cover board alternate, so you do the difference of the 11 and the 3,000 credit, you actually come up with about $16,200 difference if you wanted to go with the added layer of protection with that heavy duty ISO. So you'd be at a $92,300 for Boone Brothers versus $76,100 for Whitehawk, for a difference of that 16,200.
Yeah, can you give me that number once more? The added cost for Boone Brothers, 92,000.
For 300.
Yeah. Thanks.
Going with the known product, I think is a correct.
Do you have anything else to add?
The only thing else for the roofing, I guess, that I would just want to bring up is we did talk to them. There's the radio tower that's on top of the building. They would work with the county's radio tower vendor to ensure that that thing stayed operational. They're gonna have to do a little shifting around. And then the only other thing that got brought up is there's a few mechanical units up there. They didn't see any problem, but there could be a possibility that if they kind of shift that unit around and the condensing lines on there, something would break. The county would probably have to get out a mechanical contractor, or Boone Brothers has some in the area that they work with to get up there to maybe, fix that condensing line or any other piping that might be hooked up to the unit. But it's just sitting up there like on 4x4s right now. So just one other thing to note. And I think there's a few other things. There's like a pigeon cage trap up there or something. So just a few other items to coordinate with the county during that work that we can help facilitate as well.
Something else we'd recommend on this is having a contingency on it for unknown conditions. Just in case if they tear the roof off, it's something that's, we think it's all on a concrete deck, but if there's something that comes up that's unforeseen, we should have a contingency for that.
And what percent contingency would you recommend?
I don't know, Bill, what would you think of that? Maybe 10%, something like that?
Yeah, I would think
Hard to tell.
10% would be plenty.
Yeah.
It's yeah, if you tear the roof off and there's a big hole in the concrete or something, that'd be like way worst case scenario, but the existing drawings show a concrete lid on top of that. So I would imagine that everything's intact, but
I think it'd be unlikely that we'll spend any of it, but it is an older building, and it could be something that wasn't on the drawings or something that's unusual. So I don't think it'd be over 10%. I think, the difference on it with the tuck pointing, there's often, we picked the 35%, and, it's just plain unknown until you get a lift up there and you really look at it. Roofing isn't that way. Roofing is, it's a pretty straightforward job. So if you budgeted, 10% or something like that, I think you'll be
I
fine.
saw there was completion dates down on the tuck pointing part, but what's the completion dates anticipated up on the roofing part?
right. So sorry, we did forget to put that. Boone Brothers said they would be able to start sometime in October. We wouldn't anticipate it being more than a 2 to 3 week process. So I would say it'd completion be in November. Some of that right now is availability of materials with the insulation. So as soon as they can be cut loose to start ordering and procuring these materials, just with construction cost and everything rising, those materials are changing daily, weekly, or monthly, depending on what company you're dealing with. So that polyiso insulation, though, is something that we're seeing increases on continually. I think they had about 120-day procurement time for the material. Again, it's just kind of a recommendation until they actually place the order and get an actual delivery date. So not a very large project. So don't anticipate any issues there, but.
Should we put a hard completion date in?
I don't know. There are arguments of saying that, being that it's a membrane, in terms of the best time to put it on, snow doesn't leak into a building rain does. So, I mean, we could put, it's gonna come down to material availability for the timing on it. But I don't know if you want to lose this bid by saying that if it's 30 days late, that it goes away. I don't think it doesn't harm the quality of the building, quality of the installation.
Right.
The other possibility would be to put a bonus amount in for completion by a certain date.
The problem is getting the material.
Yeah.
I mean, I just ordered some parts for my tractor today or the other day, and they were supposed to be in and they're not in. And they thought they'd be here. I ordered them last week and they're running 2 or 3 weeks behind. So I don't think we can hold them, to that kind of a deal if they can't get the material. It's not that they don't want to do the work.
Yeah, I think everybody I've talked to says the same thing about construction right now. What I was suggesting is that, every contractor has a line and, people jumping the line and so on. And so by adding a bonus, you're not in any way, for completion by a certain date, you're not in any way compromising the basic bid. They still get everything, but they get extra, if they get it done by a reasonable date. And I'm not suggesting that we say it's got to be done right away. I'm suggesting that, maybe we can come up with a date that, that's reasonable in terms of acquiring materials and getting the work done. But I just don't want it to be 2 years.
I believe my recommendation would be is just that it needs to be completed by end of calendar year of 2021. The glues are all temperature sensitive, and so they're not going to want to drag it out, I would say, much past like mid-November. And it's like I said, it's not that big of a project. More of the challenge is just going to be the height of the building, getting materials up there. Tearing off and putting it back is not going to take them very long. So if I would think that would cover you, that it's going to be done this year. Like they do make low temperature glues that they can use or have to wait for a warmer day. But if you're worried about it going into next year, I think that would cover the county. My recommendation anyway.
And I think we should probably ask if Lexi is there, just in terms of making sure if we did a bonus on it, making sure that we can legally do that after the bid was received.
And my suggestion was just to ask for a hard date that makes them work towards that a little harder. I didn't ask for a penalty for late completion. And that was the reason for that, was that's when you get so that you scare them off by not being able to, or giving them substantial penalties for not completing in time. Giving our expectations, in other words, a hard completion date is a different thing.
And I can follow up with Boone Brothers and get more of a hard date and follow back up with Carrie if everybody would like me to.
Yeah, and if they could give us an idea of what, if there's changes, to give us timely updates on when they would get started and finished.
Definitely.
Where are they from?
Sioux City. They've got several offices, Omaha, Kansas, but they've got a location in Sioux City that they'd be doing this work out of.
Well, since you gave them a very high rating here, or the highest you can give them, I guess. So I think that they're a pretty reputable company.
And that's sorry, not to cut you off. That isn't, and that's not a rating that we gave them. That's actually from I'd have to get the exact name, a credit safe that we subscribe to. So it's pulling financial background information that we do on all of our subcontractors, just as kind of a double check of their financial status and everything. So.
But usually if you have a high rating of that kind of thing, you're usually pretty reputable.
Correct. And we've used them on multiple jobs before, so definitely a proven contractor.
Yeah. Say, what a reasonable date to keep us out of interference with cold weather glues or something like that, would like say November 15 be a reasonable suggestion?
I believe so, and I can follow up with Boone Brothers and see if they'd have any problem that when a contract sent to them, that if a November 15th date was put in there, if they would see any issues with it, and if they say no problem, then that would cover the county and they would feel good about it. And
That's about the time that I
forward.
switched from normal summer, fall weather considerations for temperature to wintertime stuff. So that's about the time that I've pulled out of the air essentially to switch. So it's
Sure.
and it's not completely out of the air. It's on yearly average temperatures, daily average temperatures during the year.
Sure. No, I think that'd be a great day. We usually shoot for Thanksgiving. You usually get enough nice days, but try to finish most roofs up prior to Thanksgiving. It usually keeps you safe.
We entertain an emotion then?
Yep.
I'll make the motion to approve Boone Brothers, the suggested contractors for roofing, and Heineman restoration for the tuck pointing on the Clay County Courthouse project.
I'll second.
A motion and a second, further discussion.
The thing is, are we gonna add that contingency extra on to both of them? I mean, does that have to be part of it?
That would be in budgeting rather than,
Would that be just in budgeting and not part of this?
Yeah, that'd be budgeting, and we actually have the funds in
Okay, I'm
that
just
capital.
making sure that it
account.
does have to be part of the,
That fits within the budget.
Okay,
Yes,
so
it should
good.
go on.
Yep, and the performance bond as well.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
I,
Aye.
Those same sign. Motion passes.
the Boone Brothers is 92,300. And Heineman was 76,100. I
Mm,
believe, or
no.
is that, no, sorry. I don't have Heineman.
Yeah, Heineman was 65,000.
like
Plus
76.
19,
Plus
Right.
30,000 contingency, plus $1,950 for performance bond. And that comes up to 96,950, but we would hope that that 30,000 contingency, would not be used entirely. And then the re-roofing contract was 92,300 plus a 10% contingency for 101,530. And the completion date would be November 15, 2021.
what was the Heineman again? Because,
Yeah,
but take out the 30,000
65.
65,000
plus
plus 30,000 contingency
But
plus $1,950.
the
for-
30,000 is budgeted only. That's not what we're approved. We approve the bid.
Right, but when a contingency occurs, yeah, we can, so that's, yeah, so the bid is 65,000.
Plus the 1,950.
Yeah, that would be we'd add that to the performance bond.
Right.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Dave.
All right. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Ditch board.
Move to go into ditch board.
Second,
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those same sign. Ron, you said there is, they paid into the lateral 50, but there's not all that.
Yeah, I stopped over after the meeting and talked to Heineman.
last meeting, and lateral 3A stops right at the east end of that property, right at 453, I believe, and this is west of that. And the total line is 452. So maybe it's 454, but 454, that's oil drilled, so. Has to be 453, but it stopped right at the east side of the intersection. And this is on the west side of that intersection, south side of 312. According to what she has on the map.
Is there, and the highway doesn't cover that.
Yeah, it goes under the highway at 312.
So this property is on the south side.
Yeah. So, but there is assessed, special assessment, which I guess everybody pays because it does drain into lateral 50. So, and
But this isn't part of that.
no, I don't know if she figured that out for sure or not. Excuse me.
So are they paying, they're paying a special assessment, but they're not paying into the lateral?
Yeah, they pay on lateral 50. Because
Their land,
all the fields there. will pay
Right.
on the lateral.
right,
But then there'd be another assessment if there was an actual lateral.
okay.
Ran on a fire crowd.
Microphone, please.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Lane, I thought I had it on. Yeah, so they're only paying into lateral 50. And this property's, the ditch isn't lateral 50 that they want to replace the culverts on.
So it sounds to me like we're getting to the point where the culverts are gonna be their responsibility.
Yeah.
Correct?
In the township.
Or township, yeah.
That's the way it looked to me, but I didn't have time to dig any deeper.
So it's the township's responsibility then to allow them to do what they need to do. Correct?
To allow them to do what they. do.
Yes, that's what I'm getting at.
But they're
right?
still gonna end up paying for it
Yes,
all the way.
but they gotta check with the township to see if it's all right to do what they want to do. Okay. That's what I was getting at, yeah. Well,
I think that's where we go from here.
I do too.
You wanna get a hold of Todd?
Probably not gonna want to hear that. Unless you do.
I get to tell people that a lot. So.
Yeah, no, bad news guy.
Yeah. Anything else for ditch board then?
Move to come out of ditch board.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We're in regular session. Driveway applications for Gordon Anderson.
Yeah, 3 of them. Of course, checked them out. One of them actually is the one that, I don't know if you were aware, he put plastic pipe in. I told him that didn't fly, so when he asked me if he could just dump a bucket load of dirt on each end of the pipe, I told him, yeah, go ahead. Well, then I saw what he did, so I made him fill out a driveway application, so it'll be, he already has the pipe, just waiting for approval. And all 3 of them, 2 of them are on 300th Street, one of them's on University at his house. 300th Street is a oil road to the north, county oil. And I checked them all out and I recommend approval. I believe I actually signed, no, I don't sign those.
So he actually had some plastic pipe in there, gonna
Yeah,
take
he
that
already
out,
took
put
it
the
out.
regular stuff in.
Yeah, I
Okay.
took it out.
Okay.
And we have one other pipe, well, I'll let you figure it out.
Well, I'll move to approve it.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second, and that's for all 3 applications, correct?
Yes.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right,
Opposed, same sign, motion passes. Driveway application for Cottonwood Farms.
This is actually submitted by Thomas Munster, I hope I pronounced it right.
says underneath, but Cottonwood Farms is what the county road called Loop Road, but it's actually 321st. And basically there's a gate in his pasture and apparently he's building a house. And they just been driving up out of the ditch or moving the cows out of there. And no culvert required because there really isn't a ditch. It all slopes off the road back down into the pasture. So I recommend you approve that also.
So he doesn't need a culvert at all then?
No, there is no culverts in any other driveways on the south side of the road.
Yeah, so he says size and length of culvert to be determined, but
Yeah.
you're not concerned about
No,
that.
well, he said to be determined was whether we needed a culvert or not. And I told him we didn't.
Okay,
So, yeah, I guess no culvert needed. I should have.
There's no
crossed out.
slope, so there's no
Yeah,
water flow, so there's no
it
need
just
for the culvert.
continually runs to the field on the south
Right.
side there.
Right,
okay.
Pretty steep.
Well, then I'll motion to approve.
second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
And just for your information, I do have checks for them all, so. They're covered. We did have one other culvert that got put in the road ditch, that's plastic. I haven't advised you, we got removed, but I already talked to him. And so he didn't realize that. Whether or not, but he hasn't got back to me to get a driveway application to. Because we don't allow plastic pipe just for the fact you gotta fill it, plastic pipe right to the end to keep them from floating and coming up in high water, so.
Also, if you burn the ditch, they would need to burn too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Does anybody have anything else for Rod? or Rod?
The only other thing is, I give Alexis a copy of our True North bid to see, and it pretty much sounds like 50, 60 counties in the state are having their state's attorney look at the True North bid, which is our culverts, and we got a notice yesterday by email that yesterday culvert prices went up. Because the material went up, but we asked for bids for a year and never had this ever happen before. So I give it to Alexis, told her to bring it up at a different meeting, but just making you aware I haven't got an email on just for instance, those pipe, for Todd By, we're like $3,883. So I was kind of hoping before the meeting I'd get a price of what the increase is. So I don't know. No, there's not a county in the state any happy about it either. But as I read it, and I'm definitely no lawyer, but we accepted a bid. I don't see where we signed a contract like we do when we do microservicing. There's actually a contract executed and you guys all vote on it and sign it, but we've been doing it this way for 16 years and it's the first time. I mean, I don't think we got a warning. We got the email yesterday and I asked the lady I deal with this morning, when did those prices increase? And she said yesterday. So the same day we got the email. So I let Alexis, of course, she's pretty busy. So I told her whatever. I mean, this is going to be just a long drawn out thing. And as soon as they give me an update, you know, they won't even say it's going to be a 5%, 10%, 20%. You know, they're just leaving it open ended. So I'm reaching out to some other culvert companies. Only trouble with those guys, they're out of state and we can't get a long chunk of culvert. For some reason, they can only bring 50 foot at a time. So like on our big culverts, they bring 80, and if we pay a little extra for a permit, they can bring 100 foot at one time, so we don't have that splice in the middle. That's the only problem. But right now, we don't need anything real big. These were the two pipe that I was most concerned about the increase, so. I'll keep you updated.
Now,
on
when we bid, it was for delivery from that company for the duration of this year, right?
that. To Clay County.
Yep, and they gave you notice of a normal price increase. They had given us a bid for several products at a certain price for each of those products. The second question maybe to ask them right away is, do they intend to honor those bids? We know that the regular price is going up.
Already,
Sometimes you can kind of hold their feet to the fire a little bit.
that's the email I printed, give that to Alexis. Also, the letter they sent us that they aren't honoring. The way I take it, those metal bridges we've been installing,
Right.
so the bid for them, it says right at the top of the page, this price for 1 year, none of it, our cutting edges, our bridges, none of it, they're honoring. That whole little booklet we accept, Beetle County sends out,
Mhm.
and so anything in there, those prices are no longer, except for maybe the bridge plank and the way wood is, I wouldn't even bet on that, but
Mhm.
we're trying to get rid of all the bridge planks.
Yeah, this sure sounds like a problem for the state's attorney
Yep.
that we probably can't do anything about. So
Yep.
thanks for
So
referring it.
I dropped it off at her office yesterday, hate to bug her, because she's busier than heck, but she said she'd take a look at it and let us know. So then we have 5 applicants for our job opening. Wow. So HR is gonna help us starting on Monday. The job just closed, I believe, yesterday. So she's gonna help us go through. So we got a couple good local people too, which is good. So
How's it working out with the company in Sioux Falls that's coming down doing the?
first time wasn't so good.
Okay.
We got them straightened out and went into the records on what our mechanic used to take to change the oil in the blade, and they agreed that their guy took too much time. Plus he pressure washed it. I said, I'm not paying his wages. I can pay somebody $18 an hour to pressure wash it. That's the operator's job anyway. So, yeah, we got it straightened out. He's been down once, changed oil in 3 trucks, skid loader or dozer and the semi. And he did it all in one day, and
Pretty good.
I don't know, it's about same as what we were paying to have one on staff. And now we haven't had, nothing for a couple weeks for him. So I mean, we don't have to pay nothing if he ain't down there. It ain't like we're paying him so much a month to be on call. And he will come down to work on something that breaks down or something. He just happened to be there the day the crack sealer broke down, so that worked out pretty slick. But
So that's a good way to plan then. If you're gonna
Yeah.
have something break down, make sure today you're gonna change oil.
Right. Well, we got some vehicles coming up for oil changes, and one might get 100 miles earlier, one might get 100 miles longer, but I want at least three
Oh, yeah.
three things for him to work on, so. But
Good,
to answer your question, yes, so far.
good deal.
Anybody have anything else for Rod?
Oh, yeah.
I see. Signs coming up.
Huh?
Did we talk about Clay County Park signs?
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, we're done with Rod with that part.
Well,
Maybe you noticed, on D Road, by that bridge that has a big scour hole under it, two things. I got approved from the Corps of Engineers for our 404 plan, so I can move forward to have the biologist come down and stain it, make sure no Topeka shiners are in there. Then we can dewater it and fix it. I'm waiting to hear back from the biologist. But right next to that, we tore out a driveway, two rusted out culverts, I mean, completely. Yeah, terrible.
They look like slinkies.
And
Yeah.
so our laser would not shoot from there to the river. So we could make sure we get the pipe set. So I had to have Pullman come out with his GPS. And there's only 9 inches of fall from right east of that bridge to the river. Because Ron Yacht, this goes into his property, he wanted to clean the ditch out, which is gonna be a wash. Well, then we asked Ron, why are the flop gates on the west side of the driveway instead of the east? So that creek there, the water comes up in there and they're trying to keep it from running back to the east. So why do we need the culverts there? And he's like, I don't know. So we took the pipe out and did not put them back in. I made a little note. And Ron, I didn't make Ron sign any paper. I'm not too worried about him, but I said, if some reason it doesn't work, we'll have to come back in there, but makes no sense to me why there was even pipe in that driveway in the first place. Because that creek, I think, comes from up on the hill to the west of 19. That goes under that bridge, correct?
Yeah.
So
It's fed from 2 different directions.
I'm not in the habit of not doing that, but that one just did not make sense. The landowner agreed. He's the only one that's affected by it. So hopefully I didn't overstep my bounds, but
No, the only thing I would like to see is we put it in the minutes, because you guys did agree that if it doesn't work,
yeah.
that we'll pay to put them back in.
Right.
Because they were our responsibility. He didn't want any, it rusted out, caved in. That was the worst pipes I've seen. I don't know how come they lasted that long.
So if we can put it in the minutes, Carrie, that we took them out, but if they need to be replaced, that it's at the county's expense. And what size culverts are they?
30-inch by 80 feet.
So
Actually, we took up 30 by 47, but the remnants started out. at 80
They sort of total up to that length.
So it should be, if need be, they'll be replaced with 2 30 by 80 foot culverts.
Yeah,
Just in case you're gone and Ron's gone and the next person comes along and nobody remembers, it's at least in the minutes.
just in
Right.
case. I'm not talking about Ron either.
Just in case it's a problem later.
Much later.
We were talking retirement, not the other side.
You've got at least 10 years
Retire until retirement, right?
until you can talk about it.
Oh,
No comment,
Anything
but
else?
that's
Ed?
all I have.
Let's see. Clay County Park Board. Everybody get to see the signs?
Yeah,
Or
so the,
sign?
yeah, the first one is a sign. The second one, and the state with our approval is willing to make those signs for us. The second is a brochure that they hand out to anybody who comes into the park with an ATV that explains, or a golf cart or a scooter or a moped that explains the the state rules in state parks. And Shane Birch recommended that we adopt them. And we have had some complaints about the behavior of ATVs. So that's why Shane sent us along and offered to have these made. So given to the camp manager, whenever anybody shows up with a scooter, moped, snowmobile, golf cart, they get a copy of the rules.
Leave them on the trailer. Were we suggesting making up our own brochure that's like this, or just hand this one out?
I think Shane Birch would be open to either, but they're willing to print them.
Yeah, I did a markup of the brochure that would make it, if we wanted to tailor it to our park. For instance, we probably wouldn't need a reference to Oahe downstream and Redheim Bay off-road vehicle areas, for instance.
No.
If
Right.
we're going to make a new one, we could hand just this one out. But
It'll be confusing.
it might be good for us to have a brochure made, and I'm willing to share the markup.
Yeah, I think it should just say Clay County Park.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
yep.
Oh, yeah, Custer State Park doesn't need to be.
Great. And
Otherwise
then,
it gets read of which, oh, this doesn't pertain to us.
Mhm.
It pertains to Oahe.
Did you change where it says in other state park areas to other county?
Yeah.
Yeah,
county Park
You
areas?
can do it. A minute will give I've got it all in red, so it's easy to find my addendums and changes.
However
So,
you- Now, there's only one sign we're gonna hang, right? The Welcome to Clay County Park.
correct.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly. And he said it would take about 2 weeks to get it done. But they will get it done and
Yeah, the state has their own sign company, Pleasant or Pheasant Industries. Which is good.
And the basic sign is the result of the Clay County Park Association, coming up with the basic information on how the park would work, so that the park manager had a voice in discussions. And then the state made a few changes. The phone number there is worth noting because it's the phone number of the camp management. The VCDC is completely out of the reservation system at this point, unless the commission asks them to come back in. So the choices we have are either moving all reservations to VCDC and a night answering system. So there'll be people 24/7 answering the phone, or next year, we couldn't do it this year because they're changing systems. Next year, going with the state system. And the state reservation system would require that people who went into the campground would have to pay the $8 state fee as well as the camping fee. I think there's what was it, Dick? A $7 or $8, I think it was an $8 reservation expense that the state charges on top of the cost. So in other words, for campers, it's a lot more expensive if we go with the state system. It's a
It'd
lot
be like
cheaper.
30% increase to camping costs.
Right.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that would be for the campground only.
Right, exactly. So we could do one of a number of things. We could go with this sign as it is, which for the time being, I think would probably, give the park a little more stability in the short run. But we could also just ask the VCDC to take on the reservation system. They I think might be willing to do that if they were confident in the management of the park. I'm not sure that they would do that today, so I actually recommend that that the sign be the sign. Both of us.
She's the official
For
Parks Board
representative.
representative from the commission. And I was elected as a regular lowly board member.
There's 14
Which is
board members.
in a
right
lot
now.
of ways. it's a good-
Yeah, and I'm personally very happy about that because Dick knows the park.
Now we've got, these ATV rules and golf carts and scooters. What happens if they break them?
Yeah, so that's when we call the sheriff's department. So if because it's a violation of motor vehicle laws. Yeah, these are your vehicle has to be licensed, right?
Yeah, but
And
just say they're all licensed, but they're on a trail that they're not supposed to be on. Then what?
If they're on a trail, they need to be licensed.
Right.
Right, but
there's
they're not
trails
sup-
that weren't.
Right, they're not supposed to be on a trail. Well, it's county property and, you know, I think whenever something goes wrong at the park, that's not a civil matter. The park management is trained to call the sheriff's department and the sheriff's department sends somebody down. And if it's a civil matter, they leave it to them to work out. But if it's like a motor vehicle violation, or disorderly conduct, I mean, I don't know, would that be disorderly conduct if there's a sign trespassing issue? Yeah, so I would leave that, I would leave that to the officer to sort of work out what the violation is. But you know, and they when they call the sheriff's department, they say that you know, it happens both ways. Sometimes it's a civil matter that has to do with paying for site or whatever, but sometimes it's a criminal matter. And you know,
This isn't really anything new, Andy. It's
you know,
the way we've been handling it. for
Yeah, there's
years anyway.
nothing new. You could establish park ordinances with criminal penalties that we could cite for that. Like you could cite for driving on the path, the walking path, but there's no such ordinance or state law right now other than, you know, a trespassing sort of situation, because it is posted.
yeah, so the state has had this brochure for quite a while, and you know, Shane's been there for 20 years and says it works pretty well. You know, it gives I mean, basically the idea of the brochure is to give notice to people with ATVs and so on that they can't just have them run in the campground.
Right.
And that they can't let their kids, I mean, yeah, apparently recently there was actually a young kid on an ATV driving around, you know, all over the place, and nobody was.
But I would assume they're not all campers that bring their ATVs down there then.
No.
Because that's what I was wondering, if they were the campers, they're just gonna be asked to leave immediately. I mean, you lost your spot. But I didn't know how you handled it. So.
Yeah, there are folks that come down to the boat ramp area with ATVs on board.
Okay.
And they'll unload there, and unless they're licensed, really, they're not legal to use that
Right.
anywhere in the park. The brochure.
Microphone, please, Dick.
Sorry, we're gonna have to get you a badge for the microphone, please, and I appreciate the help. Yeah, they're, as it stands now, you know, they're supposed to be licensed to have lights, horn, the whole schmear.
Yep.
So.
So are you saying that they're not allowed to use a licensed ATV in the campground?
Yes, they are. They are allowed to be used there. And the brochure points that out. And I think the present signage actually outlines that too.
Because you'll have people that'll get on their ATV and drive it to the shower house. And then you'll have kids do the same thing.
Yeah.
Go-karts and scooters and.
Which they can or can't do.
You can if it's licensed and they're a licensed driver,
Okay.
unless the county says no.
Yeah, I think it's under the rules that the state, and I don't have another copy of that here. If it's like a scooter that's under 70 cc's, it doesn't have to be licensed, but there are rules on who can ride those and that sort of things.
50 cc.
Yeah, I didn't know. I know the biggest complaints were the trails that they're not supposed to be on.
Correct.
How strongly is the maximum occupancy of 6 people kept?
Yeah, we had
Seems a little
yeah,
tight.
we had a long discussion about that. And, you know, often a family will come with a bunch of kids and they may even have, you know, 7 people or 8 people in the family. And so the rule is, you know, is here as a standard. But basically, if you've got a very large number of people, you have to get 2 sites. The park manager will bend and be reasonable if it's like 1 family and 1 RV. But, you know, if you got 2 RVs and 10 people, the park manager is going to say, no, you got to have 2 sites.
But it doesn't say anything about 1 vehicle. I mean, 1 RV either. So
No, no, so the spaces will allow multiple vehicles. I mean, so some families come with an RV and a car. You know, some families will come with two vehicles. As long as the vehicles fit, that's permissible. But it's the people that maximum occupancy of a campsite is 6 people. It makes sure that the campground's not overtaxed and overcrowded, and that the sanitary facilities operate properly, and so on.
Seems arbitrary.
It is,
Well, it is arbitrary.
because we talked about it. I mean,
Mhm.
the one guy's camper and my camper sleeps 10.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have,
Well,
and anymore, I mean, you've got his, hers, and ours with a lot of families. It's not a problem to get up to 6 or 8
and
kids.
grandma.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, just say it's mom and dad, and
Uh-huh.
we've got all the kids for the weekend. I mean, you could be 8 to 10 people easily and be the immediate family. So they're gonna have to, I don't know how they're
Yeah,
gonna
Shane.
handle that one.
Yeah, Shane Birch said that this has worked pretty well in all the state campgrounds, and that the key is that the campground manager has to be sensitive to the family issue. What they don't want is, 4 carloads of, college kids in
Right.
there
Right.
partying all night, and this kind of discourages that.
I mean, there's a difference between 1 camper and 4 tents on the same,
Oh, agreed.
so.
Yeah.
So do we need a motion to accept that sign to be made?
Also move.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
That's with the corrections, correct?
Well, this is just for the sign,
Oh, just for the sign.
just the
Okay,
campground.
fine.
What is it? The Welcome to Clay County Park sign.
Thanks, Rod.
So that's all we're voting on right now.
Fine.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Okay, and then, I just wanted to check in with everybody so that we're all on the same page. We had the annual meeting of the association on June 3rd, and Travis and Dick both came. I thought it was a really productive meeting, and we came up with a kind of rules committee to write the rules that will govern the organization and management of the park during the period of time when the commission is superintending it. And so the committee so far, and correct me, the 2 of you, if I've missed anybody, these are the notes I took, right? Are Bill Kennedy, Paul Peterson, Bruce Plate, Carolyn Boutros, who many of you may not know, but she is an extremely competent treasurer for the organization, and she understands the financial transactions really well. Myself and Dick, Rich Burns, who worked for the Bureau of Land Management for 36 years and superintended a lot of camping spaces over those years, and Kelly Ashby, who's got a master's in park management and is a management consultant in particular for parks. So that's the group. And I think, Travis's idea was to make it relatively small with the idea that it would work together to come up with financial policies and procedures. And I think that should probably be the first order of business, and some personnel policies.
How many
And
people are on that list?
let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, including us.
So 6 then, because you guys are
Mhm.
already on our.
Mhm.
board.
Yeah,
You
and
guys don't need to sit on that.
one
Correct.
question is, I don't know whether we ought to get Lane Stewart on there too. Uh, just a thought, because he's
So
got,
that's an advisory board?
so this is the advisory board to the commission.
They're gonna
Um,
update the bylaws.
Yep, and we don't have financial policies and procedures, so I think that would be number 1. Updating bylaws would be number 2. Coming up with a personnel policy would be important as well. And in particular with respect to alcohol parties and so on while you're working.
It'd be nice to have an odd number. Because that works a lot better. You got 6 on there, you got 8 on there now, but if I could see where Dick could probably stay on, because, well, they're.
So we're gonna work together as a joint,
Mhm.
so they can't vote on both sides.
Right.
You don't each get 2 votes. So you have to figure out which side you're gonna be on.
Yeah.
Or not side, but which way,
Mm.
which board you're gonna vote with,
Correct.
which I would rather see you vote with this board since this is the official one.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and I would be glad to convene the group, unless you would like to do that.
Say that again.
I'd be glad to convene the group and, perhaps do a draft that the group could work on. I think that will be, and when we get to the bylaws as a group, we would want to do them one section at a time together. But I think with financial policies and procedures, it's often easier if one person drafts a model and then, we work through every section of it together and decide what we want, what we don't want, what we want to add, what we want to take off, and so on. So if that makes sense to you all as a way of proceeding, I'd be glad to pull people together for our first meeting.
You tell me, I haven't worked with the board. I mean, you guys are working with the park board. You tell me, I can see what Travis is saying. In the respect that you can't, if you're gonna have an advisory board,
you can't run it.
you
also.
can't run it also. I mean, that's the point of having an advisory board, is to have somebody else that's actually gonna run it. And that's where I get, and I would think I'd come up with 7 people, so you always have a deciding vote. And so I guess if Lane wanted to be on it, that would bring you up to the 7 with you 2 off of it, correct?
Yeah, and Lane, would you be willing to do that?
I am good with whatever you folks determined is for my goodness.
We'll only do what's in your best
that a
interest.
yes or a no?
That's the worst correct answer I've ever heard.
Lane, I'm just writing your name down here.
So I guess that's a
Yeah,
yes. Yes.
That's fine. Just let me know when, where, all of that. One thing that we really need to consider too is for the financial aspects of it all, because I don't know the inner workings of the park board here in the few years, but is the payments, are we receiving invoices for work done in the park? Is that how things are being paid?
No, how things are being paid right now is that the park manager tells the treasurer how much to pay and who to make the check out to. That's how
Okay.
it's working right now.
Okay.
So those are things your advisory board is going to want to shore up.
Right.
Right, and Dick, and anybody who's owned a business knows, you have to have the invoices with the payment to the park manager. Is he an employee or a subcontractor? And if
We
he's
don't know.
And if he's
I mean, Dick, maybe you know.
Well, he's there's some that are 1099s. That's really what determines it. There are
Right.
few people that are 1099s and some are W-2s, as I recall.
Okay.
I think the easiest
That
way
tells us.
the easiest way to approach this, Lane, with the board is assume we have nothing in place
Yeah, okay.
and set it up how you would like to see it.
Yeah, and Carolyn Boutros can tell us what will actually work or not. She's a really fine bookkeeper. So
See, the appropriate way to do this is that for those that are non-statutory employees who use invoices, as you suggested, if they are employees, then they need to keep timesheets, and they're under wage and hours legislation then, and that's handled. The bookkeeping is handled in an entirely different way.
Okay, that's what I was getting at. It was whether or not we're actually sending in 941s or if we're just 1099ing everybody. And it's a whole different ballgame either way.
Yeah, and I think part of what's happened is that some people get free spaces in exchange for the work that they do. And then sometimes they get paid and sometimes they don't. And we just don't have any policies on any of that. So I think Travis is right. We have to just start from ground zero and build a reliable, responsible financial system.
Okay, yeah, I'm good. Just let me know when, where. And you're talking, the advisory board is the Paul, Bill, Bruce, that.
Exactly.
Okay. Yep, I'm good. Whatever you want me to do.
Thanks.
Anything else for the park board? Okay, public defender contract. We got a few other things. I mean, is he waiting for us or is he busy?
I'm doing stuff. He's not informed yet.
Okay,
So
you just want to text him and say whenever he's available. We've got the fireworks permit for Fireworks Unlimited.
That's the normal
Yeah.
one we
Yeah.
had annually.
Yeah, I move to approve.
I'll
Yeah,
second
it's a little different location this year.
that. Oh,
Yeah.
In the field south of New to You. Okay.
Yeah, I'll buy their building out there.
Okay, so we got a motion. Is that right? And a second?
and a second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. The WIC health contract renewal.
Kind of the normal, isn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah, I think so.
I guess I'd move to have the chairman sign it, prove it.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, there's no local match.
No.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Resolution for automatic budget supplement. The county has been reimbursed $72,527 for Homeland Security grant equipment.
So move.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passed.
We need to do a vote on this one?
Yeah. I think we do.
Yeah, it's a,
Oh,
it's
roll
a,
call.
So, well, yeah, we'll do a roll call on this one since it's
Okay.
dealing with the budget. So, okay. So Hammond,
Yeah. Aye.
Manning,
Yes.
Smith,
yes.
Packard,
Yes,
Mochler.
Yes, motion passes.
You were right.
We'll wait for Seth. Did Seth think he was coming? We can just make the motion if it's pro bono.
Yeah.
oh, what?
Just right here, it's fine.
What do we walk into?
They're gonna both leave right away.
We put on suits for that.
Yeah. How are you? Good, how are you two?
Good. We're in the basement today.
Yeah.
Is it hot on third floor?
No, not quite yet, but the walk to the truck will be a long one.
Yeah. So Seth, you want to talk or who wants to start?
I can start.
Okay.
Was Terry able to get out the email that I sent out to you guys?
I haven't seen it.
I haven't
so-
seen it.
I saw it this morning. It did show up.
I was gonna say, I sent it out this morning first. thing,
Okay.
so.
I have some extra copies here. Let me just, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Didn't get it. Thanks.
I need one because my email closed. And I'd rather watch this.
Well, every time that we start getting ready to just come down and chat with you, it's always good. I like going back and just reflecting on what's been the past and looking at the years that we've been down here. And I didn't realize that Phil Peterson, our other partner at the office, he's the one that originally started down here and had the contract with the county. And when we were looking back at the years, I'd always thought that he'd started in 1999. He said, nope, that was actually 1997. So when we finish up this year, it'll be 25 years that we've been down here. And when you start thinking back on that, it's quite a milestone to have been able to work with the county and work with the various state's attorneys and judges, the staff over at the sheriff's office, everybody that's come through in these last 25 years. So it's been a little bit different these last 2 years because we've had some pretty unprecedented growth just in the number of cases and things that have been coming through that both the state's attorney's office and us as the defenders needed to deal with. So in the past, we had been doing multi-year contracts with the county, typically 3-year contracts at a time, and then we just had a built-in escalator. So everybody, it gave us some good security and going into the future. I think it's easier for the county too to be looking at budgeting in the coming years instead of not knowing on a year-to-year basis where we're at. So these last 2 years for 2020 and 2021, we had been doing 1-year contracts. The last time when we were here and we were proposing a contract, we had been at 130,000 was the number that we had proposed. The commission came back and it offered 110,000, and that's what we're doing the contract at this year. We would like to get back to a 3-year contract just for more of that stability, both for our firm and I hope also for the county just going forward in your budgeting. So the 130 that we had talked to you about, I think it was from what we were doing in our office, the number of cases and how that worked out on a per case basis. We were basically in 2019, we were at about $237 a case. The increase that came in for 2020, that got us up to about $300, and we were trying to get back up into that $400 range per case. Back in 2010, just for comparison, the per case rate was about $536. So because of the case increases and the dollar amounts not going up correspondingly for the contract, we were at about half of what we were doing cases for clear back in 2010. The increases that the county did give us, we greatly appreciated that because it was quite a step from 2019 coming into 2020. It was roughly about 30%. The increase for last year was about at 8.8% to get us to that 110. Even if the case numbers just stayed where they are, if we stayed roughly in that 300 to 350, the 130,000 would have still put us right about at a $400 per case mark. What we're proposing to the commission here today is looking at a 3-year contract where you guys know what the escalators are. And instead of just trying to jump to that 130, we were proposing to look at ramping that in over the course of the next 3 years. So essentially getting to that 130 mark by year 3. The current amount for this year is 110,000. I just rounded it up to even dollars. So for 2022, we're proposing a
10% increase, the next year a 5%, and then back to a 3%. And then we would be looking at trying to keep more of that regular, just 2.5% to 3% going forward from that point, depending, of course, on what's going on with the case numbers. One thing that we're definitely aware of, and I know the commission is as well, is just the issue with the jail. Going forward, depending on where all the inmates are going to be housed, I think the goal right now is to try to keep the inmates that need to be relocated over in Union County. It's certainly not as easy and time friendly as being able to come from the upstairs office and just go to the jail. So it's going to incur a lot more time for staff just having to travel and do that. I went through that same experience working up in Lincoln County when Minnehaha County didn't have the jail built yet. You guys were actually housing some of the Lincoln County inmates down here. They were in Yankton. We had them clear up in the name of town, clear up in Minnesota, up in Nobles County, Worthington, and we had them in Minnehaha. So having to travel around and that amount of time that it takes just to make and keep contact with your client, that's something that we're definitely looking at too. So that's just in general, that's the proposal that we'd like to talk to you about. Be happy to just visit with you. Would like to kind of see where you guys are at, what you're thinking as well too.
I'm wondering what your average number of hours per case is.
Yeah, why don't you jump in?
So it's going to depend a lot depending on the type of case. And I think I said some of this the last time we were before the commission. There's some, I'll call it luxury with being in this county because of how efficient the state's attorney's office is. A lot of cases, I can get the same case here that I get in a different county, and I can close it quite a bit faster because of the efficiency and the relationships that we have. And so that benefits us on a lot of those basic run-of-the-mill cases. But then we get into the ag assaults, the violent crimes, the rapes, and those are the ones that take a significant more amount of time. In part just because of client control and meeting with the clients, but also the volume of discovery for me to review and then review with the client. So that's really hard to say. I don't have an average, but I would say on those basic cases, you're probably talking less than 10 hours on any given, I would say, controlled substance down, and less yet on the basic misdemeanors. Once we get above that and like say the aggravateds and things like that with video and whatnot, I don't want to say the sky's the limit, but it really opens up from there.
And how many, like, what's the percentage of the kind of run-of-the-mill cases versus these cases that take a lot more time?
Right. So we were actually just talking about this morning, and I was kind of joking. I really can't remember off the top of my head the last DUI third or DUI fourth I had, which when I came from up north, it seemed like that was about all we did. And I got here and I almost never and still almost never see those cases. It was all primarily controlled substances, methamphetamine. And now, so I used to joke, I wish I could just have a DUI. And this morning I was joking with Dave saying I would love to have a meth case, because it seems like for whatever reason this year, it's become aggravated assaults and sex offenses. So now we don't even have the control being the primary anymore. It seems to be the norm. That's in felony court. Misdemeanor court, certainly your assaults, the simple assaults still take more time because you have more people involved. But the DUIs still are pretty streamlined. But I would say even in misdemeanor court, and maybe you can say it has any numbers, but I would think probably close to a third of what I end up working on are still the people crimes, even in misdemeanor court, at least.
So you're seeing a lot of increase in the rape and the
And yes,
domestic
absolutely.
violence.
I mean, we'll have 2 rape cases that actually go to trial this summer. A kidnapping, ag assault case that will go to trial before the summer is over. This morning in court, we had arraignments, and Seth isn't on all of these, but it was a small court day. We had our status hearing on the homicide case. We had an aggravated battery of an infant case, separate case, class 1 felony on that. We had a plea taking on a rape case. We had a theft case that the theft amount is nearly $500,000. I mean, they're big offenses, and that is consistent. We do have, when I'm looking at our breakdown, and I know that isn't exactly the same, like I said, we've seen plenty of outside counsel for some of the rape cases we have pending, but last year, our rough breakdown of percentage, roughly 26% of our felony cases were drug offenses as the primary offense on the case. There may be some others, but felony drug offenses were that. 21% were burglaries and thefts. Assaults were 15%. Sex offenses were 7%. I mean, I'll tell you that sounds small, but as noted, those violent crime cases, there's a lot of discovery and that's a lot of time. DUIs are going to be 3%, and other types of crimes, intentional damage, failure to register, those types of offenses made up the other 28%. And misdemeanor realm, drug offenses were 6%. I mean, we'll see that drop potentially this year, but I think we're going to make up for it in DUIs and some of the other things. DUIs were 18%. Assaults were 15%. Bond and failure to appears were 13%. Intentional damage were 4%. And then we had, 42% that are going to be other traffic offenses, crimes of dishonesty, things of that nature. So, and keep in mind that 2020 was a wonky year anyway. So overall case volume was down, but that was the percentage of breakdown. Just for reference point, in 2019, misdemeanor cases, we had drug offenses that made up 16%. And we've done some things in our office differently since Amendment A and things went through last year. So we've already kind of began anticipating some of that. And you saw the drop off then of, but then you're going to see that made up for in other aspects of people under the influence doing things they shouldn't. So.
And I do think too, those numbers are probably going, I have no doubt those are accurate, but I think where my recollection of kind of where everybody seemed to lose their minds was right around going into Christmas. Alexis and I are meeting and going, well, here's what's coming kind of down the pike. And sure enough, that's when a lot of those rapes and the ags seem to kind of materialize and come to fruition. So that's where, in my mind, where I can kind of flag recalling seeing that spike in where I jokingly say, boy, the meth case should be nice right about now, because that's where everything kind of just went up. So I think we'll even have different numbers yet next year.
You think you're anticipating that it's going to go higher, that we're going to have more court cases?
I think it stands to reason that we will. Kind of even like Ms. Tracy was saying, we legalize marijuana, which is what it is. But then what do we do with the DUIs? And we have laws that aren't prepared to efficiently address that issue, like a state like Colorado do have. So then we're going to get bogged down in even the prosecution of what may appear on paper to be a run-of-the-mill DUI. It's a marijuana DUI, and that complicates things. And then we have the meth, but when meth isn't enough anymore, that's where we get the burglaries, because they're trying to support a habit. That's where we get unbelievable violent crime, because people aren't acting as they normally would. So we're seeing an escalation from what starts as kind of the base root, and then it grows. And so until that base problem is addressed, I have no reason to believe that all the other stuff that's coming from it will decline. Okay.
Well, I just have to say it for their benefit. These numbers are ridiculously high.
Which one?
But I think they're fair. And then it's at least one cost we can solidify for the next 3 years.
Yeah.
So
in any city, it'd only go up 2 to 3% after that.
Yeah.
I did hear that, and we got that on the recording, right?
I
No, I heard that
I do
today.
have a question. This is a little absurd, I must admit, but just in case all cases go down significantly, is there a de-escalation of price?
We're still trying to get some of the numbers back to where we were 10, 11 years ago. And it's something that everybody's struggling with. Your whole issue is with the jail, you know it all too well, because of the increase in what's necessary to try to deal with this. But Yeah, I just don't see the numbers going down.
I do not either, but I had to ask it.
Yeah, understood.
And we will visit it in 3 years. We accept this anyway, so
Correct.
yeah, we relook at that point.
We
I'm-
haven't quite started the budgeting process yet. I guess this is a part of that.
It is, but we usually accept this one.
It's smart to get something like this out of the way early.
Yeah. Because we're actually setting this for the budget for the next 3 years.
Correct.
I'll make a motion to accept this contract as stated for the 3 years.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. I'd like to thank you very much.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
You're stuck with us now for almost 30 years.
Now, will you get us something that I can sign then? Or?
Yeah, I have the contract.
Okay. Sounds good.
Good. Thank you all very much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
I hope the numbers do go down.
Yes.
I think we all
I'd be willing to pay you that, because I think that's the cheap part.
Kind of messes it up for you, so you don't get bored.
Yeah, there's a lot more other costs.
It's never that boring right now.
Yeah, so we'd be better off just to pay them and have the numbers. go
Yeah,
down.
I don't think we consider ourselves overpaid.
No, no. I think that'd be a good thing.
Public defenders work hard. I would never want that job.
Andy,
It's a hard job.
jail discussion?
I don't know if you have any questions for me, but essentially we've been talking all along that we've been just kind of hanging on by our fingernails, running the jail in the hopes that we would be moving forward on constructing a new one. Our belief was that we're acting in good faith, knowing of the deficiencies and the conditions we're putting the inmates in, that we were working toward a solution. At this point, there's no solution on the horizon. And I think we have to close the jail as we've been saying we would. Although I've been intending to not literally close the jail. What I want to do is hold it as a holding facility, keep it staffed, receive the incoming inmates, and then keep them for a maximum of 72 hours. And then if they are to be held longer than that, or they just haven't left yet, we'll move them to Union County or any other jail we can find space. I've already met with the Union County Sheriff. He would take all of our inmates as we speak today, although they typically get full and wouldn't be able to accept our inmates. As we sit here today, they can take them. If they get full, we also have contracts with Yankton County, Minnehaha County, Thurston County, Nebraska, Plymouth County, Iowa, and Sioux County, Iowa to take our inmates. So we've been using them quite a bit in these past few years, taking our overflow. So I think we can continue to do that. We have our van now for transport. The jail staff, I don't anticipate reducing. We'll need to staff 24 hours. We have a lot of other duties besides monitoring the inmates. We do 24/7 program, inmate or well, besides the booking, applicant fingerprint cards, and quite a few other duties that we need to have people here for. We could say, well, we're not going to have that at all, a complete close down and have all arresting officers transport off inmates to jails elsewhere. But I don't think that effectively serves our citizens, doesn't serve this agency either, because we have to transport them back in the morning. And so, and our own officers would be transporting to other jails. So I think the best case scenario is to continue to have jail staff, although we would reduce the staffing. Right now we have 5 shifts a day. So at times we have 2 jailers on duty. I think we can reduce that to 1 at a time. And the other 2 positions would become transport personnel. And we would increase their training and they would handle these transports, so we're not keeping deputies off the road the additional time. Deputies would still pick up a lot of transports, but primarily it would be the transport officers. Then my intention is that with a 72-hour length of stay, the issues that we have in terms of functionality, lacking amenities that protect the constitutional rights of the inmates, such as sunshine, fresh air, things like that,
wouldn't necessarily come into play in those first 72 hours anyway. They're in a classification status. And so I don't think we're really depriving of anybody of any rights that they have in that period. So I think that we can do that. We'll have minimal use of the older part of the jail and try to maintain the inmates in the newer part, but we'll need all of it. So my plan is once we get it emptied to, and as we speak today, it'll be empty because we don't have anybody within that 72-hour window. People come and go daily. The bookings are going to happen, but most of them leave within the day. You know, generally our average length of stay is 7.25 days. And so you think, well, that's not very much. Why don't we just stretch it out to 7 and we're about there? Well, that's an average. Most of our inmates leave within the day, most of them within an hour or two. And so when you figure that into your average, we've got people right now in our jail that have been here over 6 months, or roughly 6 months. We've had people for a lot longer. So it's those people that we can't keep, you know, in those conditions any longer now that we've been so upfront about the deficiencies. I think that you know, we'll be moving them out regularly. I think court services would still be able to do they do the short-term hold. Since the Senate Bill 70 came in, what was it, 2015, we started seeing court service holds in the 48-hour range regularly because that was, you know, it was a cost shift to the counties to keep these people out of the prison and they put them in the county jail whenever they act out. I think we can continue to hold those in our jail because of the 48-hour time period. But what we're going to need to do is fix some issues in the jail. We have one shower that we've long ago shut down because it was in such bad shape. But I want to see if I can get that fixed and convert one of the old cell blocks into a work release housing. And then my hope is we can hold 4 adult work release, and in another cell block, we can resolve a few plumbing issues. We can have female work release because the judges and state's attorney have been asking for the option to do work release because the only option we have right now for those is electronic monitoring, and that's not always going to get the result that they're looking for when they do sentencing. So, and that's my goal, is then to continue to function in the short term. This is a temporary solution because the jail's getting older and older as we sit here. There's been a lot of allegations that it was mismanagement or poorly maintained, and that's just not the case. The issues are just the age and the lack of renovation. We've been spending thousands of dollars a year maintaining and improving the jail, and that'll continue. But we can actually take some steps once we reduce the population to fix some issues that we haven't been able to fix just because we're there living, working in the building all the time. There's only so much you can do. So we'll resolve some issues that'll help us extend the life a little longer, but we won't be housing inmates in our jail anymore, just transitioning through our jail, if that makes sense.
How much is this going to affect our budget?
Considerably. I estimate that we'll start paying about $28,000 to $30,000 a month starting in June. I'm going to be requesting, I'm estimating now about $160,000 this year in a supplement to the jail budget to handle this. And then next year you can about double that. That'll be in my budget request for 2022, which I haven't completed because I was waiting to see how things went.
So you're thinking that next year you'll be asking for $320,000 more than what your budget is now? You said about double that, 160,000?
No, I think I have, it's not in front of me. I think there's 70,000 in my budget right now for out of county boarding. So 70,000 less than that, so 250,000.
Okay.
More. So, I'm saying an additional 250,000 over what we have now. That's probably where I'll go with it. We look at our trends. We had, as Alexis mentioned a bit ago, 2020 was a weird year. So things kind of took a little drop, but you don't want to, those anomaly years, you don't want to plan based on those. We're going to have spikes and going to have drops. But we look at the trends and I expect it will be increasing in the next year or so because we're already bouncing back to 2019 numbers. Not quite as bad as it got in 2019. In 2019, we had times where there was no floor space in the jail, not just bed space, but no floor space because we had inmates on the floors. And then they were stepping around each other on their cots or they're just laying on the floor on mattresses. So We're not there yet, and we won't be there again. But in terms of the jail, but we're getting near to that. But they'll be housed elsewhere.
So like when you transport the prisoners to another locality, you have actually, you're gonna use a van, I'm assuming,
When it's available.
when it's available. So you usually have 2 people go then?
Yes.
Yes. Has that always been?
No, we generally try to only let them outnumbers by 1.
Okay.
So I'll have 1 deputy transport 2 inmates, sometimes 3 if we're just strapped for personnel and they're all in restraints. And in the van, we try to avoid that. And so we'll use the transport officers that we're going to transition from the jail and deputies to supplement that.
But there'll be 2 people that'll be going, so that's gonna.
I won't say all the time because if
Right.
we're only moving 1 inmate,
Right.
and especially if we have people on overtime, I'd probably only use 1 person. But in that case, we'll probably just have the on-duty deputy if they're available to do that, if it's
Okay.
after hours or something.
Okay.
We have to consider firearms training for some of those. And that's no decision's been made on that yet. I've got concerns on transport officers carrying firearms. Generally nationwide, when you see transport officers getting killed, they're getting killed with their own gun. So we want to make sure we've done some adequate training on that. But at the same time, if I take a transport today, I'm taking my gun with me. So I'm not going to do it unarmed. So it's something we're considering in terms of policy.
It's gonna be quite a coordinating everything, because
Yeah,
you're gonna have some that you're taking to somewhere and some you're gonna pick up to bring back for court or.
Tiffany Husby, she's a sergeant, she's a jail administrator. I've equated her new duties to being similar to a trucking company dispatcher that has trucks all over the country, and some are unloaded and some are loaded, and they're trying to get them home and trying to keep them earning money. She'll be similar to that in terms of where the inmates are, when they need to be brought back. There's a lot of communication between the state's attorney and the public defender, these other jails, to get these people back in time for court. We're doing that even today with bringing people from Union County for court while we're taking inmates from Clay County to court, and then they have to go back, and then one going to prison today too. So and that happens anyway. There's just be more of it.
Well, it sounds to me like you've got a plan, which is very good.
I do, and I actually have, I sat and kind of pounded it out to put it in front of me, and I made copies for you guys so you can take a look through it. I'll leave them with you before I leave. But, and it's even, actually the copies don't show the draft watermark, but it's kind of work in progress. I just didn't want to kind of make this up in my head, and then we'll just try to adapt. I want to document it to some extent, because I need to pass this information on to the jail staff so they know that, this upheaval isn't necessarily going to affect them, and it's not because of them. So, there's some sort of continuity for them.
Yeah, and it sounds to me like, the next step for us is to figure out, what we can propose that will pass. I would like to do that sooner rather than later. And, it might be helpful if we had a specialist in jail design, who has, there are these companies across the country that do nothing but design jails and other kinds of institutions. And they've got a lot of experience with, architectural design that makes it safer and more secure and healthier for inmates and for staff. And I would love to see us, pursue, that kind of design, so that when we go out to bond, we can show people this is exactly what we're going to do. This is exactly how much it's going to cost, and this is exactly where it's going to go. And I have no doubt that bond issue would pass. I think that, I didn't talk to anybody who was against the jail. Nobody.
I don't think you want to dismiss the experts that we have already used, and BWBR has that's what they do, and that's why they were contracted with by the county,
Okay.
is to do that design. It's modern. They are experts in that. And that's why we have JLG and BWBR for that purpose. And
Yeah, and-
BWBR is the corrections.
And I'd like to speak.
Bills?
I agree with Andy that we had, two experts, and definitely the second was definitely an expert, as you asked. Also, that this started with safety for the courthouse and the courthouse employees to go strictly with the jail, which is wonderful and definitely needed. So is safety to the courthouse and access for disability. There's more problem here than just the jail. And just addressing the jail, I know it would pass very fast or faster if we just go with the jail. That still leaves a very, very expensive problem. And I think we have to face that also.
Yeah, I think this has been evaluated, and I think that was identified 3 years ago plus of having an expert in that fashion. So we don't end up with the design flaws in what we would call the new portion of the jail back in the 80s, where it just went low bid and not somebody with expertise. So even with Klein McCarthy, if you look at that Klein McCarthy study, and I don't remember what we paid them, 50,000, or were we up to 80 before it was done?
75, I think.
So they then also enlisted the help of jail specialists who came in, and a subsection of that report was specifically with those specializing in correctional facilities. So we did that once. In addition to who the county has hired with the architecture firm and the construction manager at risk. I mean, those are a part of the interview process that was vetted with the committee, with members here. I mean, it was a panel interview with, I can't remember if 3 or 5 different architecture firms specializing in this. Every single one of them came to interview, specialized in this. This is what they were doing. And those questions were asked of them. Specifically, our consultant that's been hired specializes in this. There's a lot of throwing Dick Strasberg under the bus by the opposition, and that was absolutely outrageous because the county has spent money on him because this is what he does. So we have Klein McCarthy as an expert, Tegra as an expert, hired to be the county representative specifically for that, helping us craft appropriate questions through that interview process to vet out the best firms who know what they're doing here. And we have hired and contracted with the best firms. And I know that you weren't a part of all of that, Betty, but I wanted to make that very clear to the public. The county has hired, paid money, and secured those experts in that field. Where we go from here, I don't know, but we have those people, and we need to use them wherever we go because we've paid money for them already.
I guess the thing I have, I have a problem with the committee people that were on the committee is that we have said that they didn't know anything, basically, what we've said in the end here. And they put in a lot of time. And I feel really bad for them. I feel bad for the people that work in this building, and I also feel bad for the people that were on that committee. I don't care if you don't like me, but I do care about how those people are perceived. And because they went beyond with no pay, nothing. They just did it all. They went and visited places. They seen what was going on, and they came back with their best ideas. And when I've talked to people out there before the vote and after this vote, everybody that I talked to pretty much said, if they told me they were going to vote no, the reason they told me they were going to vote no was not because they cared about the historical building, not because they cared about the jail, because they cared about what it was going to cost. It came right down to money.
And I agree with you that kudos to the entire committee. I think we've all been unanimous in our appreciation of the hard work that they did over, 2.5 really hard years. But I think when you see a 2-to-1 vote against a bond issue, you have to pay attention.
Well,
and
Betty,
I think that the goal here is not to criticize what's gone before, but the goal here is to work out where are we going to go in the future, and how can we create a bond issue that addresses our most serious needs, number one, and number two is acceptable to the voters. And so those are the two things that had to happen. And the question in my mind is, how do we get there? And I know that this has been a very, very bitter fight, and there's a lot of bad feelings all around. I think it's time to put that behind us and to speak to the challenges that we have to face today. And to me, the challenges are, we need a new jail, and we need it at and law enforcement center, and we need it at a cost that the voters feel that they can handle. I know that quite a few people talked about their concerns about the cost of the new bond issue for the new school, and that in their mind they weren't seeing 41 million. What they were seeing is 41 million plus 26 million on their tax bill, and that was a major concern. But I just don't think that we can afford to wait on the jail and law enforcement center. And I think we just need to, we need to focus, and we need to move ahead and do the best job we can. And I know that, Andy mentioned, sunshine and exercise and, like basic requirements of the human body. And I agree with your plan. I think it's probably the best we can do at this point. But it's also, in the short term, it's going to be really expensive. I would way rather be paying off bonds, than paying rent to adjoining counties. And so, the faster we can get there, the better. I also think we've got a problem coming up, which is that there's going to be a $26 million bond on the November ballot. And we're going to have to think about timing as well. So.
And Betty, I appreciate that. And I think I think we would all like to see that done. It is troubling to me to hear one of our commissioners say that we should hire an expert, because I don't know how much more information. If a commissioner sitting here today doesn't know that we have hired and spent taxpayer dollars for multiple experts, how do we expect the public to know that? It's been in the minutes. We've had public meetings about it. We've talked about it. And so I just really want to make sure that when we identify the problems going forward and why we want to put it out there as, if that's what you all decide to do, a jail law enforcement center, that it's, from my perspective, that's about cost then, and not because we haven't secured the right folks to do the job.
Yeah, well, you made your point. Thank you.
So we'll have to figure something out with the jail. I don't know where we're going to cut costs on a jail. It is what it is. And to sit here and say that nobody is fighting against the jail in the bond issue is false. I sat in those forums and had to defend why we were building a 44 jail. I mean, our own Senator Art Rush sat there and said, we don't need this big of a jail. I mean, he argued against it all the time. So to say that people aren't against it is false. And
Yeah,
they're very misinformed on why we need a certain size jail. I mean, I've said it before, we've got our own Sheriff Andy, but this isn't Mayberry. We don't have 2 cells. I mean, we can't do that anymore. We're housing way more than we ever thought we ever would. So.
Yeah, and I think, the people I've talked to, the doubts have been around, actually pretty small numbers. And I think in part it's because of the experience of Minnehaha County Jail overbuilding, and this question of whether overbuilding.
How is Minnehaha County overbuilt when they're already full?
Are they already full, Andy? Because I had heard that they had a floor that they weren't using, that they were renting out, and that they were looking for a long-term contract with Springfield.
Staffing.
Yeah,
hiring people.
staffing is
They
different.
could take more inmates if they had the staff.
Yeah. Yes.
And it isn't a lack of inmates.
Right. So, you know, that's a,
And that was a conversation from 6 months ago. I don't know where they're at now.
yeah, you know, it's hard to get information about, you know, about jail capacity, but that might be an interesting question to look at, you know, whether, you know, exactly what is the right number. I know Klein McCarthy's number is very different from the most recent number. And so I think that's the uncertainty. I'm not saying I know, I don't know.
What number do you think Klein McCarthy recommended?
It was like 25? No.
Let's clarify that.
Okay.
Rush said that many times. I'm confident he knows what he's saying is incorrect, but Klein McCarthy estimated an average daily population of 25 in 10
Right.
years. I think that's incorrect. I estimate 28 in 10 years.
Okay.
Klein McCarthy recommended a 40-bed jail, plain black and white. It's
Oh,
in
wow.
there.
Well,
Read it again. Our
yeah.
Rush could read it again. It's in there. 40
Yeah, so-
is the number.
Okay.
Page
So
87 of the March 2018.
page 87?
Yes.
Yeah,
And
because all I had was what Dick Fuller gave me, and I read that really
It's
carefully.
in the report. 25 was an estimate of the average daily population. You don't build for your average daily population. And you need to build for your spikes. To build a 25-bed jail would be so incredibly short-sighted, so incredibly inappropriate to build a jail like that in Clay County, knowing that we're going to be full on day one and we'll be housing in other counties. While we're paying a bond, we'll be paying housing costs in another county. 40 is the number, 44 is better. That's just the facts that you could study it forever. You're going to come up with the same information.
Okay.
The study has been done. The number is known. You can misrepresent it if you want, so you can sway voters, but the number is what it is.
Yeah, and I have to say that I read the data that was given to me pretty carefully, and what I saw was the daily population number. I didn't see the 40.
It says 40.
Yeah.
It also
Yeah.
says that the jail that we need today, not for the future, needs to be 5 times the size of the jail we have today.
I agree with that.
And we
Yeah.
need to increase our number.
Yeah.
So-
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't think I think he's talking about square footage, right?
Square
Not
footage.
beds. Yeah,
Square
he's
footage,
not,
not
he's
beds.
talking about square
Beds.
footage, not beds. So yeah, so the question is how do we move forward from here? And you know, to create a bond issue that people will support.
But how do you trim off? I mean, we knew what the cost of the jail law enforcement was going to be. It was 26 million. To get what they need, not what they want.
We
How
did
do you
programming
trim?
work in this room. We did programming work for, many meetings. And we trimmed and trimmed and trimmed. The experts were surprised to find that I was including within the 44 beds, a work release pod that they didn't consider as part of our population. And I was. And so they were actually recommending a larger jail than that, 44 bed for population plus work release pod. I didn't believe that was necessary, and we cut that down to that. One thing that we often do in our jail is say we have 20 beds, but our jail has evolved to where some of the cells are literally intake and holding classification cells. We don't use those for housing. So truthfully, our jail for housing in the way that the industry measures it is 14, is the number of beds we have. Now I count, every bed we have because we use every bed and we put people on the floor. Well, we don't anymore, but we used to. But in the study that's been done, the 44 bed includes work release in a very minimum security setting, which is much less expensive. So we have trimmed that and trimmed it as much as we can. Trim it anymore, we're going to be taking things away that we need. So we considered, for example, using dispatch for perimeter door access control, rather than having a control room in the jail manned by a jail personnel to run the perimeter and interior access doors. That saves us a lot of costs. So we figured it that way. That's the way we do it now. our dispatch runs the perimeter doors and the jailers manage the interior doors with keys. That's not the way it's done anymore, but we want to go that route for the savings, and it saves money in construction. It also saves money in staffing. So I can't imagine where we're going to save any more money on this jail. This jail that was designed is the least expensive option we could have done. And to build less, it's so inappropriate and short-sighted that I don't think we should, and I won't recommend anything less to you.
And the other issue is site. That was, accused that we had special agreements with people for sites, or this is going to be built where we're hiding information. It comes down to, and as far as the vote, I see it as we build it here, or we don't build it, or we build it somewhere else and still incur all the costs of transporting back and forth and lack of safety again.
Well, there's quite a few people who just voted no because they just don't want to spend the money. They don't understand that they're going to spend the money anyway.
Right.
I mean, you always have that certain segment it's a no matter what, even though they don't understand that it's going to cost you, and in the long run, it's going to cost you even more. But you're never going to change their mind. So I suppose if we want to purchase a piece of land that will get lambasted on, like T or Lincoln County did, spent 1.4 million on a piece of property they can't use now.
Yeah, what we might want to do instead is an option.
So we can add more money onto this cost project.
No, and normally you get an option to buy, and that becomes part of the, part of the contract of sale. I mean, it's at a, but at least
But
you've
if
got
we'd
a
have done
site.
that 4 years ago, you have to renew that option every year. I mean, that landowner doesn't just sit on it until you're ready to pay them. So that does add cost.
Yeah, it probably adds to the price at which somebody's willing to sell, because you can't,
Not just
you
that,
can't
it's the
sell
renewing of the
immediately.
option every year. Because we're not going to go to vote this year. We'll never make the ballot. Well, it'd have to be a special election. There is no ballot, and we'll never make the tax roll for next year. Because don't we have to wait 6 months before we can do another bond issue? Or is that just schools?
I think that's probably the case. I haven't looked into that. I would tell you, I mean, when you guys are ready to discuss what you want to do, let me know. I can look into specific things. Carrie can look into what we want to do there. I don't know if it has to be the exact same. I mean, if you're proposing something different, how that works. But yes, I mean, typically those options are going to cost us money because we're going to pay for the option to purchase. So I know we looked into that 3 years ago. I don't remember.
I think when we talked about these houses up here, we looked into it that time, didn't we?
Yeah.
And I was
I
thinking.
got a realtor to approach those homeowners.
What's that?
I had a realtor approach those homeowners.
Right. And I think there was something to do to
Well,
that.
the first one didn't want to sell, so
Right,
there was no.
exactly. Came to
he
mute
was
point,
saying-
actually.
Yeah, that was the end of the conversation.
But it seems to me like, because I read some of this the other night, but maybe I was thinking school elections too, but I thought you had to wait 6 months.
don't
But I could be
remember,
wrong.
But we can figure that out.
I guess that's a mute point at the moment to get some of the other stuff done first.
And then I know, Andy, you had said before that you were concerned about transport from the court to, for prisoners back and forth, and that building on this site was no more or less problematical for you than building on an alternate site. Is that, I mean,
I can tell you.
is that still true, or?
My position on that is optimally, you transport the inmates in a secure setting through a secure corridor, elevator shaft, whatever, through a contiguous wall directly into a holding spot behind the courtroom. That's optimal. That was our goal.
our goal was to build something that satisfies all of our needs and concerns and solves our problems. That isn't to say you couldn't do anything else. Turner County transports them from Minnehaha County or here to court. They walk up the steps of the courthouse, just like we always do now. My recommendation to you is if we don't include the courthouse in the project, it really doesn't matter to me where it is. Because we'll still be transporting them through the halls of this courthouse to court. I would recommend that you don't attach to this building, because there's always issues with construction. The Yankton County Sheriff told me, whatever you do, don't marry up to an existing building like they did there. And because you carry all the problems that you've had before into the new building. Lincoln County had the same thing. They did an addition to an old courthouse and regretted it. And so I would prefer to see if this courthouse is, whether it's renovated or just maintained and continues to function, that we'd not be attached to it. Whether that we're across the street or across town, doesn't really matter to me. I'd go with the land that is most favorable to us and that fits the building. And that's not necessarily fit the building to the land. For example, the parking lot across the street, I think you're going to be limited in the size and the design of the building on such a small piece of property. One of the site options that had been considered and discussed was up near the fire station. I understand that's zone residential, used to be a trailer court. Maybe that's not an option. Maybe that's not enough space, but that was one of the suggestions. As far as I'm concerned, we can transport inmates from there to here if we have to do an in-person hearing. So I don't know if that answers your question.
That does. Thank
Like I
you.
say, having it in the same building is optimal, but other options are possible.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my concern would be, sort of health and safety issues around space, and that there be adequate space so that, inmates can get exercise and sun and so on. We meet the minimum, recommendations of the ACA.
Yeah, and of course, that's one of the issues we've had this year is you can't design the building till you have the money to pay the architect to design the building. And so ideally though, you get the concept, you get the square footage, you get the price, you pass the bond, then they draw up the building. They had told us for the facility that we were looking at building, we needed 8 acres. And if we were to build a smaller building or something less, then we would need that information, of course.
Yeah, I mean,
Paying for that.
one option would be bond anticipation notes, which are what cities and counties do across the country. I mean, you float bond anticipation notes that are short-term notes that allow you to pay for the architectural fees, planning fees, and so on. And then once you float the actual bond, you repay the bond anticipation notes and incorporate that amount of indebtedness into, into the bond.
So what happens if the bond doesn't pass?
Yeah.
Then the county pays off the notes. But what it basically simplifies, it allows you to produce a model of what voters are paying for when they vote yes. It allows you to have a site, and to be able to show voters exactly what is in the plan, so they can see this is the jail we're buying, and know that. And so that's the way it's done.
Can you give us an example or 3 of those?
Of bond anticipation notes?
Where it's been done for a jail in a similar situation to ours?
I have to confess that in the state of South Dakota, I don't know how often bond anticipation notes are used, but they're certainly used across the country.
How about anywhere in the United States? Can you give us an example or 3?
Everywhere. I mean, this is like a really common method of finance. I mean, this shows up in every public finance textbook. It's You know, I mean, every place I've worked or served in the past has used bond anticipation notes. I mean, it's incredibly common. Yeah,
Well, that's why it should be easy to come up with an example or three. I'm just wondering here, you know, if we're coming up with a ready, fire, aim thing. Tell us, you know, where it's worked before. I'd like to see.
yeah.
it.
So I was the chief administrative officer of the city of Hampton, Connecticut for what, 4 years. And before that, I was a city council member, and we used bond anticipation notes. And the city of New Haven used bond anticipation notes. I mean, it's a really standard, you know, it's a standard finance method. I mean, basically the pre-construction stuff is, you know, overall it's relatively inexpensive in comparison to, you know, the costs of a whole bond issue. And, you know, I mean, obviously our other option is that we can just keep, you know, sending inmates elsewhere. I mean, you know, I think we're not surrounded by communities that also need new jails. So it would be difficult to do a regional jail, which is a solution that a lot of you know, small towns use. But
I think we're getting a far afield here.
Yeah.
That would be a 5 to 10 to 15-year project to do a regional jail. It probably would also never happen.
yeah,
We have our
I
own
agree.
project. Let's keep it to where we're
Okay, so-
talking what reality.
Well, then I don't know if we can do a regional jail. They tried that up north, didn't they? And the state wouldn't let them. Actually, they were looking for bonding, I guess, on.
Are you thinking about Walworth County?
Yeah.
No, their citizens didn't want to do it. I don't see that as any sort of a solution that would solve our issues here,
Nope.
because as Phil said, that is way down the road. Union and Yankton County have made considerable investment in their jails. They're not about to walk away from that. Turner County, it doesn't have the average daily population to justify any construction for their purposes, although we can count on Turner County here. And people seem to have objection to building to house another county's inmates, but when you have a partnership like we have with them, I think that we can count on that. At the same time, housing other counties' inmates in the empty beds you do have that you design for empty beds. You know, like it or not, you have to design empty beds into your jail so you can accommodate all the different classifications. There's nothing wrong with housing another county's inmate in those beds if they match the classification. And so you see quite a bit of that. And I imagine Lincoln County will eventually pass something, but I don't know how far down the road that is. But I think a regional jail is all worthy of discussion, but in the end, you're still just housing your inmates at county cost somewhere else.
Yeah, and
transporting them.
and to be clear, I was not suggesting that. I was rejecting it. All right. So what I was saying is that I don't think that's a possibility for us, given our situation right now. I don't think we
It's good
should
to bring it
go-
up because somebody's going to bring it up.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you call this bond? What were they?
Bond
called?
anticipation notes.
Okay, so we could probably, that is something I would assume that Dick could answer
He
for
would know
us.
about, yes.
He would know about it if there is, you know, how it works, and give us some examples if that's something we want to look at. I mean, if it's done all over, we should be able to Dick should be able to figure out
Yeah.
some for us.
Yeah.
Because that's the reason why we got him hired. That's the reason that he's helped us out from the beginning. We've already paid for him.
Yeah.
Or paying for him.
Yeah.
And so I think that we need to stick with the people that we've got in place. Just let me finish here. The deal is, we've already, as Lexi said earlier, we had the committee that sat down and they went through, they interviewed people. We've got an architect, we've got a person that willing to build it, and we got Dick. I can't see going out there and finding somebody new. We've done that work. Let's don't start from scratch again. Let's work towards what we're at. Instead of spending more money and more time to start all over again. We did that with McCarthy, and there were some good things from them, but there was also a lot of stuff that didn't work out. And as Phyllis said earlier, we started out to make this place more safe. Wasn't anything to do with the jail. At the time, it all just kind of mushroomed into it. So if we're gonna move ahead, the two things that I want to see is one, we stick with what we got, where we started and move ahead to figure out there. I don't think we can cut any more on the jail either, from what I've seen. However, and I actually don't want to put it here. I think we put it off site somewhere else. I think it's foolish to put it here. You know, I just don't think it. You go over to Sioux County. My wife's from Sioux County, and we were over there a couple weeks ago, and you drive around there, they actually got three, maybe 4 separate buildings. They've got their where they have their jail is clear north of town, and they've got an area for the guys to get out to get sunlight and the whole bit. Well, if you start trying to cram that all in here, you're gonna have a mess. You can't do it. And there's just too much to it. We need to build somewhere else in Vermillion, but somewhere else, or Wakanda, for example.
Yep. Yeah, so I agree with you, Mike. I agree with you on all of that. And what I would, so we have some other options in terms of finance that where we wouldn't have to pay the interest rate. You know, for preliminary construction design work, which is that $1 million of COVID money that was surplus last year. We thought we would spend a good deal of it on the roof and the tuck pointing. Both came in much lower than you know, our consultant had suggested it would.
I think
and
we
so
earmarked that for this building.
What?
I think we earmarked that for this building.
The
We
whole
still have
million?
Plumbing and other issues
Yeah.
in this building that we haven't addressed. So
Yeah, but we're
don't
also
talk about using that for.
Yeah, but we're also expecting $2.7 million this next year in COVID money. And so if you add those together, I think we wouldn't have to even do bond anticipation notes because of course they're always interest bearing. They're a little higher than long-term interest rates. And because.
Are we counting chickens before they hatch? Yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna chime in. That COVID money is gonna be very limited for us. We're gonna have to get pretty creative how we're going to use that. Unless the Treasury Department comes out, you know, with some additional expanded guidelines. What I have been told from NACO is that it can be used for jails, but you have to be able to provide very sufficient documentation for the federal audit that it was used for the purposes of mitigating COVID. And so it's very tricky. And most counties are really struggling with even accepting the money because they don't know how they're going to use it. It was designed for things like premium pay for first responders, for example. Infrastructure like broadband, water, and sewer, which the county doesn't run anyway. The cities run those things typically. It's really limited. And I'm just hoping that the Treasury Department comes out with some expanded guidelines, or we might have to get really creative to find ways to document and use that money.
Yeah, but I don't recall voting specifically that whole $1 million had to go to this building. What I remember is voting that we would take the money for the roof and the tuck pointing from the $1 million. You know, we can go back in the minutes and take a look.
I think we need to go back because that was,
We put it
those
into
two were included, but it was.
Yeah, we were gonna use it for that. It's put into a building fund account.
And a building fund account could also pay for preliminary construction design for a jail.
Well, and you're also eliminating the needs of this building, which still exists. So I'd be very careful of that.
Yeah, and you know, my concern at this point is that that we expedite the design and building of the new jail. I mean, I really want to see that happen.
But the design's gonna be at least $1 million for the jail. Architect gets 5% of whatever the project is. 20 million's $1 million.
Yeah, but
I mean,
yeah,
that's just a fact, what they said.
Yeah, so
It's
I
not
think
negotiable.
Yeah, so but once we decide that, that we want a new jail, we have to figure out how to pay for preliminary design. And you know, all I'm hearing here is no, like, no, we're not going to take it from here. We're not going to take it from there. We're not going to take it from here. So
Well,
where's the money going to come from?
I'm not saying that. I'm just telling you what it's gonna cost, because you're sitting here saying, well, we've got this $1 million that we've just taken 250,000 probably of it. We're still short. We know we're gonna be short come budget time. There's no extra money. I mean, this $1 million we got, that's a one-time thing. That's 2.7 if we even take it. These aren't every year things. I mean, I know you haven't done the budget with us yet, but there is never any extra money.
Yeah. Yeah, but this is also like, this is a one-time, designing and pre-construction documents for a new jail is a one-time cost. And, I as Carrie says, I'm, we don't know yet what exactly it would pay for. Carrie, is it your sense that it would pay for example, repairs to this building?
It can be used for, from what I understand, like HVAC systems to improve, clearing out of the airflow, that kind of thing. So, if we had an HVAC system that was poorly designed or something, that could be, which we already know we have issues with temperature controlling and things like that. So maybe possibly could be used for something like that.
Yeah, so it seems like, but I think this might be the first, if we're all agreed that we need a new jail, this is preliminary finance is probably the first issue we have before us. And, we need to get some research and, and do it.
I think on the HVAC stuff, one that I know is COVID related by watching some of the professional outfits communications that I get is that air exchange and cleaning is a big deal. And a big part of that could push us to replacing the HVAC system is improving air exchange rates. And that would be extremely easy in this building.
I believe we had spoken that we would check with our consultant as far as funding and possibilities and what are the realities of South Dakota as far as our possible, funding up front toward and that sort of thing. So I think the one step is to check with our consultant on that. From what I'm hearing, we are looking to build offsite.
That's Rudlin.
Yeah, I think in order to get the kind of square footage that would create a healthy jail, that makes sense to me.
Well, why
We
don't
actually have that.
Oops,
That
sorry.
information's already been determined. I mean, they haven't drawn up blueprints, but the programming's been done. It's essentially a spreadsheet for the square footage that's needed.
So shall we, for the next meeting, get our consultant in and see what our options are for base funding, and then where do we go from there on getting what? Well, final designs we're not going to get until we actually get bond. So, correct?
Unless we pay for it out of our pocket
Yeah.
somehow. When do we have to opt out by if we went that route? That 90 cents.
Opt-outs would have to be done by July because they are referable and with the timeline for getting levies done and stuff. Because levies start happening around October. So it'd have to be July.
Okay, if you want to put that on the meeting too for next week.
So how much, what is you said 90 cents?
90 cents per thousand. Because we have to look forward for on the budget too. I mean, if Andy's gonna come with another 250,000,
Yeah,
we've
where's that
either
coming
got to
from?
cut something or we've got to raise more money. Those are the two options.
And you're, so this is, the opt-out is
It's a year opt-out. It's a 1 year opt-out.
it's a 1-year opt-out for,
It can be up to 90 cents, so whatever.
Mhm. And so that would be an opt-out for a higher budget in order to pay for,
Or to help pay for the
design,
the design costs.
but it may be to pay for transferring.
It's gonna be, yeah,
Inmates.
I mean,
That's how close we are.
yeah.
Yeah, you know, we haven't cut anything since I've been on board. We helped Gary, you know, gave people raises, helped with different organizations. I mean, that we're coming to the point where, and the last thing I really want to do is cut people's, or is to not give people raises. I think that's a necessity. So that leaves you, the only option is to cut on the things that you don't think that are necessary.
well, the things that aren't mandated for us. That's the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the way I see it. I mean, if you're going, if he says need another 250,000, no matter what we decide with the bill, we know that that's coming through no matter what. Because we can't just, you know, hit our fingers and say, hey, we got a new jail right here.
Well, yeah. And his 250,000 is an estimate. I mean, if anything, if we got back to 2019, what would that put us at, Andy? If we were back to 2019 numbers for, yeah, and to house, I mean, your 250,000 would be short.
Yeah, we were estimating $600,000-$700,000.
Yeah. What were you saying, Phyllis?
I
Is
thought
that-
it was 500,000, but
Yeah.
yeah, 6, 7.
And that's looking worst case, that's assuming Minnehaha County is the only one that could take us, because at that time, Minnehaha County was the only one that could take us. In 2019, I couldn't hardly get inmates into Union or Yankton.
Microphone, Andy.
Sorry. In 2019, we were having a lot of trouble housing inmates in Union and Yankton counties because they were full too. And so that's when we got out of state because Minnehaha County was full at the time. Their project was still underway and they couldn't take our inmates, but they are the highest rate. And when they opened up, they were the one that could take all of our inmates.
So what was the issue with Union and Yankton that they were so full? I mean,
I think same issues we are,
Just-
and now that's diminished. One thing that's happened in the last few years is Yankton County had their old jail. They had their existing jail, then they glommed this new jail onto it, and then to try to use the old what we did 30 years ago, and then extends the life of it, lets you loosen your belt if you want to say it that way. But they had this old jail, and it had gotten to where they couldn't use it. Well, they make money. Their jail operates not out of their general fund. It operates on the funding that they raise by housing inmates. They've got a roughly 100-bed jail. And so I think they spent $750,000 to renovate that old part of the jail and really expanded their capacity. Union County did the same thing just recently. They called me up when they got done. They had their, they built a new courthouse. It had a fairly small jail. And then they got to where they couldn't operate anymore. And for many years in the 90s, we held all their women because they just didn't have the ability whatsoever to classify women into their jail. Then they built the new jail that they have now. It's adjacent to the courthouse. And you access through they actually have that. They have a contiguous wall with the court that they can go through into the courtroom with their jail. So it's all one level. And so they operated quite a while with that and they got full. And just recently they took that old jail that they have in the what you'd say the courthouse, and they renovated that again, brought it up to capability to house women. And so now they're saying, if you've got women, we've got space. And so now they've got additional capacity and that'll change. But for now, it's a good situation for us to be in.
So put it on next week's.
Yep,
Uh-huh.
or, well, not next week's. We've got enough to discuss next Tuesday, because that's a special meeting. This will be at the end of the month.
That's the thing, okay, the end of the month, I'm gonna have my knee replaced. I don't want to.
And you can't zoom in?
Yeah.
I'll be zoomed out. I hope I'm zoomed out. But, La La Land, yeah, the 29th is what I'm gonna do it, so like that.
Okay, so what,
But after that, I'll zoom in after the following week.
so do we do it on the 22nd, the following Tuesday?
Yeah, if you would, that'd work better. I will be around, yeah.
And maybe we can just
I'll be
move
upright.
can we get the 29th meeting all on the 22nd and not have one on the 29th then?
We probably could.
Because we're gonna have one on the 6th, then the following, you know.
I think Drew was gonna have the second reading of that ordinance on the 22nd anyway,
Okay.
so that should work out.
And I'll be participating by Zoom that day because I will be,
I will not be here on the 22nd. If you need me.
Probably. What day would work for you?
I can try to do Zoom though. I'll be away. I can use
Okay.
Zoom if that works.
That's fine with me. That
I'll do
works
my
for everybody
best.
else. Okay. And we'll have to set that next Tuesday then. We'll have to put that on the agenda to have our meeting on the 22nd.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to this. That was quite nice.
I think we all better be in attendance of this one.
Yeah.
Anybody have anything else then?
I moved to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Opposed, same sign. We're adjourned. Thank you.